Thank you. Good evening, students. So today we have a discussion on e-way bill. Okay. This is in fact a new chapter. Actually, last year up till the last batch, e-way bill was not a separate chapter. It was part of the chapter on tax invoice itself, wherein tax invoice, credit notes and debit notes, and e-way bill, along with e-invoices, e-way bill was a chapter which was consolidated. So e-way bill was only a small item, but now e-way bill has been given full detailedly and a separate chapter itself has been given, which means the relevance of e-way bill is very much important because most of the people in practicality have faced lot of challenges in e-way bill. That's the reason e-way bill becomes very important to understand. And it is only I would say the section is only one. There's only one section for the e-way bill, but the rules are many. And luckily, you don't have to remember all the rules. There are so many forms. You don't have to luckily remember those also. So even though it's a separate chapter and new addition in your syllabus, it is very, very easy because generally, if a new chapter is added, you could expect a question from that, right? The reason why they have added it because they felt it is relevant. So if they felt it relevant, then we can see that at least some theoretical question on e-way bill will come. Practical questions on e-way bill is very unlikely because the time limit aspect, when the e-way bill be generated, what is the validity of the e-way bill, that could come, but that will not be a full-fledged question. It could either be a part of a bigger question where some supply has been made and then they tell you to ascertain the applicability of e-way bill. But otherwise, a theoretical question, I am expecting that surely this will come. Okay, so it's more of a theoretical, but as usual, we will try to narrow it down and make it in such a way that we see the concepts of this, right? So then it will be very much easy for us to grasp this. Wow, so many students joined in, so many additions now. So people who are joining in first time and who have not attended the previous session, request you to see the video lectures of the previous classes so that you are well aware of what we have studied and you become comfortable with the other topics. Okay, so let's start the session. What is a e-way bill? Firstly, okay, firstly we'll understand what is a e-way bill generally, and then we'll understand what is the relevance of e-way bill under GST. A way bill means generally a document. Just the general meaning of way bill. Whenever we say way bill, it is a document which accompanies along with the movement of goods. So that way means on the way, right? जो रास्ते में जो बिल रहता है, जो रास्ते में साथ चलता है, उसे वे बिल कहते हैं. ठीक है, जो हम लोग कुछ ट्रांसपोर्ट करते हैं, जैसे पहले लॉरी से ट्रांसपोर्ट करते थे, तो लॉरी रिसिप्ट बिकम अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, क्योंकि जब सामने वाला जो मैं किसी को बेच रहा हूं एंड द रिसिपिएंट, if the recipient gives the way bill, then he will get the delivery of the goods because the lorry person doesn't know whom to deliver. So the recipient used to produce a way bill, the lorry receipt, and he used to collect the documents. Now, GST saw that this is a practice which has been followed in the trade, that a supplier and receiver exchanges a document, and through the document, they're able to locate the supplier and the recipient. So why not we use the same system on GST? That's why they've got this concept of e-way bill. So जो way bill था उसको modify करके they've made it as a system of e-way bill. Some states had the modified version of e-way bill even before GST came in, because even under VAT they had gotten a concept. Like in the state of Karnataka, they had got something called as a e-Sugama, wherein that was a document that any movement of goods you do from Karnataka or you receive any goods in Karnataka, you need to have this e-Sugama, so that all the movement of goods at the check post is getting tracked. Now, with the e-way bill, what happens? The benefit is it is for quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance, which means before GST came in, there were a lot of check posts. Okay? The check post officer used to make you halt over a place. The vehicles, the lorries, which used to move from one state to another, he used to stop it, check all the documents. Okay, at least every vehicle, I would say, had to wait at the check post, get the goods checked by the officer. He will check the documents, those invoices with the actual goods which are there in the lorry. He will cross check that. If they say is okay, then he will pass it by. Otherwise, the check post concept itself was the goods was to halt there. Okay, and then after verification and after confirmation, they would proceed further. So now the check post concept itself is gone. That there is no check post system, but the officer still sit there. Okay, but not in the capacity as a check post officer, but in the officer in a separate capacity. So, but mostly the concept of check post is gone. So what happens if check post is not there? The vehicles only they will catch or they will hold on those vehicles for which are suspicious or which they believe they've got some information for which they have to keep the vehicles on hold and check it. Otherwise, it is easily movement. So earlier, every vehicle used to, if it is transporting from one state to another three states and then reaching the fourth state, every state it has to stop. But in case of e-way bill, it need not stop. Okay. So in a concept of e-way bill system, it will not stop. So it is for quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance. So since there is no stoppage, so it is easily moved and there is no hindrance in their movement. Then the second part is the power of e-way bill is given under section 68. That is the only section which says that every movement of goods has to be happening through a e-way bill, through a document as specified in the rules. So section 68 is the empowering section. Section 68 gave the power and the rules follow the section. Okay. The primary motive is to check GST evasion. The main reason why e-way bill, because we have seen other concepts of invoice saying that when should invoice be raised, it should be raised within a specified time. Then a return has been filed. So there are so many compliance. First, you take your registration, then you raise your invoice, then you file your returns. Then why e-way bill is required? That's a question which may come, right? So many compliances under GST. That is required because in spite of having all other compliances, when the goods physically move, it is possible that a person raises one invoice, okay, and delivers the goods to two people. Okay, that's possible. But say, okay, how is that possible? That I raise invoice, same invoice number to person A and same invoice number to person B. So two invoices are actually raised, but it has only one invoice number. So I will pay taxes only once. So how do you stop this? That's why e-way bill came in saying that e-way bill will have information of the supplier and the recipient. So you will update this details of your invoice. So your invoice doesn't go away. You have to still raise the invoice. Once you raise your invoice, input these details in a portal, GST e-way bill portal. Put the details of the supplier, put the details of the receiver, and put the quantity of the goods and all those details. Once you put the details along with the transporter's details, it gets logged there. So then with one e-way bill, you cannot generate another invoice because once you put the invoice number in the e-way bill, it will get blocked. So then how will you do the second one? That will not be possible because if you have to send the same invoice number to somebody else, first of all, invoice number is blocked. Secondly, the destination is getting changed. The supplier is getting changed. So it will block you from raising second duplicate invoice for the first original invoice, right? So that's how the GST system has made it that it will block it. Is it applicable to all states in India? Yes. The GST e-way bill is applicable to all states in India. Transporter has duplicate copy of tax invoice. So why e-way bill? Yes. even though he has a duplicate copy of the invoice, still no information is available with the department to cross check whether the invoice is correct or not, right? So they will have to have a system wherein this details of the invoice is uploaded so that they will cross check whether the invoice and the e-way details are matching, and then they will match that with the physical goods. To check unscrupulous, which means unfair, unscrupulous trade, curtailing unauthorized trade, and also helping in policing of trade of illegal goods. Because illegal goods cannot be transported, or if they're transported, where is the check there? That's where this e-way bill helps in this. So any unfair trade practices which they do, okay, or say in what could be their unfair trade practices, saying that I have sent 10,000 units of goods, but in the invoice I've mentioned only 1,000. So there's a loss to the government, right? To the extent of 9,000, it is not being billed. So the e-way bill ensures that if the value is mentioned incorrectly, and the officer can intercept it and check it whether the quantity in the vehicle and the quantity mentioned in the e-way bill is correct. E-way bill as well as the invoice. Okay, so they can cross check that. It puts to rest the worries by different states that they were losing out on GST revenues. Why they were worried, saying that okay, some supplies is made and it is getting consumed somewhere else, but the GST which has come to my state, it has not come. So they were worried. That's why this e-way bill brings in uniformity, because it is applicable all across India for any movement of goods from one state to another state, within the state, everywhere. So e-way bill is applicable to intra-state and intrastate both. Not that if I charge CGST and SGST only, then I have to raise e-way bill. No. Even if you charge IGST, still you have to raise the e-way bill. Then it introduces uniformity across the states for seamless generation. There is uniformity. No partiality with one state or another state, like how GST portal for filing returns is common. Similar to that way, e-way bill is also common. Okay. When to generate? When should you generate a e-way bill? You have raised an invoice. For invoice, you have time of supply. Now, the time of supply, what we have discussed, is for generation of an invoice, generation of a credit note and debit note and things. A similar time period separate for in e-way bill is not there. E-way bill says simple. You have to have an e-way bill before movement of goods. Before you move the goods, you need to have a e-way bill. Conveyance prior to, when to generate? Prior to movement of goods via a conveyance. Conveyance means any vehicle which you are using for transportation of goods is a conveyance, would inform each transaction's details to the tax department and obtain an acknowledgement number. So if you're raising an invoice, if you're raising a debit note, if you're raising a delivery challan, we have seen that there is an option to just raise a delivery challan in some cases. Even though there is no supply, there we will raise a delivery challan. So does it mean that only there should be a supply, then I will raise a e-way bill? What do you think? When should I raise a e-way bill? If I have a delivery challan also, should I raise it? What is the e-way bill in short? We'll get to know that, Aisha. We are just in the introduction part. Yes. So everyone knows the concept. Everyone gives confident that yes, even in case of a delivered challan, e-way bill has to be generated because the e-way bill is not basis a supply. You do supply or you don't do supply. Like in case of a job worker, you're not doing a supply. You're only giving the goods to your job worker. He will do some activity on it and send the goods back. Even in that case, you have to generate a e-way bill because e-way bill is to be generated prior to movement of goods. So it means for movement of goods, any movement of goods, you need to generate a e-way bill. Okay, movement of goods for supply, for non-supply, for transshipment, for repair, for job worker, for delivery at the site, for returning of goods, for all the movement of goods, e-way bill is required. So what happens in case of services? If we have raised an invoice for provision of service, should we deliver a generator e-way bill? Not required for service, not needed, yes. In case of service, there's no need of e-way bill. E-way bill is for movement of goods only, not for services, not required for service. Does e-way bill generate when goods are not having movement via conveyance? What could that be, Anmol? And does e-way bill get generated? E-way bill doesn't get generated automatically. Okay, it's not that once you raise an invoice, it gets generated automatically, not the case. Okay, so in case you generate it, you will have to do activity. You have to raise an invoice. You have to separately go to the portal and raise it. So it's not automatic. Secondly, one person has said, yes, sir, even in case of services, it is required. Why Manohar is saying that if we take equipment for rendering of services, like leasing, okay, I'm giving a equipment on lease. Okay, it's a service. Leasing is a service. In that case, also e-way bill will be required because even if it is in service, okay, there are three concepts in GST. When goods are delivered as goods, when service is delivered as a services, and when goods are delivered as a service. Understand? When goods are delivered as a service, goods can also be delivered as a service. In what cases goods can be delivered as a service? This good example what Manohar has given, that when I supply a equipment, I supply a vehicle itself for lease. Leasing is a service. I will raise a service invoice with a service rate of GST, but there is a movement of goods. So even in case of services, there can be movement of goods. If there is movement of goods, I will have to raise a e-way bill. Okay. And if goods are not having any movement, like when the goods are already at site and it is getting transferred within the site, there is no movement. So in case there is no movement of goods, then e-way bill is not required when the goods are already there with the customer. Like the example of equipment lease itself, I've given the equipment on lease. So I will have to generate a e-way bill, right? When I generate a e-way bill for the movement of the goods, It is a service, but still I have to raise a in e-way bill. That's right. Now, after the lease period gets over, the lessee says, I will buy it. So we have negotiated a price and I've sold it to him. So for which I will raise an invoice, but there is no movement of goods. So if there is no movement of goods, again, no e-way bill. I will still have to raise an invoice because the transaction of supply of service as the equipment leasing was different. Now selling of that equipment is different. So since I'm selling him the equipment, I have to raise an invoice for that. Clear? Okay. Proceeding further, prior to movement of goods, we have to raise a e-way bill and then ensure the movement happens. Without e-way bill, don't move the goods. Okay. Now, e-way bill, what is it? A e-way bill is a receipt. A way bill generally is a receipt or a document issued by a carrier giving details and instructions relating to the shipment of a consignment of goods, and the details include. So generally, way bill, what we had discussed before, e-way bill, way bill itself is a document which is carried by the carrier, which is issued by a carrier giving details and instructions related to shipment. So the person who carries it has these details relating to what the shipment includes. Okay. E-way bill is a now e-way bill. First we have understood way bill. Now the e-way bill. E-way bill is a compliance mechanism wherein by way of a digital interference. How digitally interference is happening? Because your invoice is raised on your system, but the data when you give it to the portal, this is getting digitally transferred. So it's a compliance mechanism wherein by way of digital interference, the person who's causing the movement of goods upholds the relevant information, uploads the relevant information prior to commencement of the movement, and generates the e-way bill on the GST portal. In other words, I can say that e-way bill is an electronic document which is generated on the GST portal evidencing movement. Okay. So it evidences that the goods have been moved from place A to place B. What are the prerequisites? There are only two prerequisites, that the person who's generating an e-way bill should be a registered person. Of course, now, because generally unregistered person cannot collect taxes, and registered person only will be authorized to use any functionalities of the GST. So the person should be a registered person. Secondly, if the transporter is not registered under GST, then he is mandated to get himself enrolled on the e-way bill portal. Okay, before generation of the e-way bill, to get a 15-digit unique transporter ID called as trans-in. Okay, so a transporter, if he's registered in the GST, then his details are available. If he's not registered, because transporter need not be, right? He's an individual transporter, he's a GTA. He need not get registered because tax is not payable by him. As we had discussed under the reverse charge mechanism, he has an option, right? So he's an optional person. He will not register, but his details are very much relevant. That's why he should get himself registered on the e-way bill portal, or get enrolled on the e-way bill portal and get his transit number. So these are only two prerequisites, only two things which are required before generating a e-way bill. Okay. We understood the basics of e-way bill. Now let's get into the intricacies. What are the benefits of e-way bill? Before that, there is a question. What is the requirement of the way bill in case of bill to ship to? We'll come to that also, Harish. We have those specific examples mentioned. Value of the goods 48,000 plus 18% GST on interstate require EWA bill. Valuation also will come, Somesh will discuss that. EWA bill didn't issued by supplier means what? EWA bill is not issued by the supplier. What do we do then? What is your question clearly? Is it tracking of goods simply? Yeah, you could say to some extent, tracking of goods as well as taxes and many other things. So EWA bill is issued by supplier. Yes, generally it is issued by the supplier. But if the supplier doesn't raise and the transport is arranged by the recipient, supplier says that your goods are ready now, you have to take and go. The arrangement was that you will take it up, right? Now, if you have taken it up, then take it completely. You have to arrange for your EWA bill also. Then you will have to. And you cannot say that, no, I will not, because the obligation is on the person who is taking it. So since he is taking it, then he will have to arrange for the EWA bill also. The supplier who is registered, he can do it, or the recipient, one of them. Okay, so the supplier or the recipient, one of them has to do it. Just 1 minute. Yeah. So the supplier, what I was telling is either the supplier or the recipient who is arranging for movement of goods, they will have to do the transportation. Okay, they will have to arrange the activity of raising a e-way bill. If unregistered in GST but enroll in e-way bill portal is enough, so he will not get enrollment in e-way bill. Only one exception is like in registration. We had discussed on handicraft products. So only in case of an handicraft products, he will raise a e-way bill. In other cases, a person who is unregistered, he will not get the e-way bill access. A person only who is registered will get access to an e-way bill. What are the benefits of e-way bill? There is physical interface to pave way for digital interface. मतलब पहले physically interference used to happen. The interface was physical that the check post officer used to check it. Now digital interface happens wherein documents are digitally verified so that it results eliminates the state boundary checkposts. If the state checkposts are removed, what will happen? The vehicles which has to wait at a long queue of the e-way bill, now they don't have to wait for that. They can move faster. They can cover more distance, right? Because if there is no wastage of time, no haltage, then they can move faster. Then thirdly, it improves the turnaround time of trucks and they're able to do more business. So that the e-way bill also helps the logistics industry to increase the average distance traveled. Earlier, the average distance traveled was less because they could travel for some kilometers where there is no checkpost. And when the checkpost comes, they'll have to wait, get their turn, and check their goods. So all these problems have been eliminated. It enhances the supply chain efficiency. It helps in faster movement of goods, single e-way bill across the country. So there is no requirement that each state you have to generate an e-way bill. You move from state A to state, like from uh, north to south also if you come. And if you're covering a lot of states, still all the states can be covered with one e-way bill. All the officers at each state will have access to it. So that if they want to check the e-way bill at any different state, still they can do it. It is easy to generate online. It reduces carbon footprint, so less number of paperwork because you don't have to carry the e-way bill. Just e-way bill number is also sufficient. And it is required for a consignment value exceeding 50,000 rupees and not for small values. So if your value of consignment exceeds 50,000, only then you need to generate an e-way bill. When is e-way bill required? E-way bill is required. E-way bill generated by registered person or recipient or GT itself when supplier or recipient not registered e-way bill, right? Is transport generate e-way bill if supplier and recipient both are not registered but transport registered? Yes. If any movement happens and the transporter is involved in this transaction, right? Now the transporter says that supplier is not raised an invoice, not raised a, they've raised an invoice, not an e-way bill, and the value of that supply exceeds 50,000 rupees, then the transporter will have to raise an e-way bill. So the first priority is for the just one moment. Yeah. So the first priority is for the person who is moving the goods, the supplier generally. If the supplier is not willing, then the receiver, one of the registered person in the transaction has to do it, either the supplier or the recipient. And for the, if both the supplier recipient doesn't do, then the transporter has to raise the e-way bill. Yeah, good question, Nishtala. If the supplier is unregistered, but the recipient is registered, okay? If the recipient is registered, then the recipient will generate the e-way bill. So what will be the documents from unregistered person to another unregistered? The invoice. It will not have the tax component. It will have the invoice. So the access will be given to the transporter. Transporter will enter the supplier and the receiver details. When he mentions the supplier details, it will ask for his GST number. So he will mention that this is unregistered. So that is also one of the option under e-way bill. When the supplier and receiver are unregistered, the option comes as unregistered person and then mention the name of the company. And then the login will happen through the transporter's login. Now, when should you raise a e-way bill? E-way bill कब raise करना चाहिए ये जरूरी है ना. हर छोटे मोटे अमाउंट के लिए आप e-way bill raise नहीं कर सकते हो. तो e-way bill is required when there is a movement of goods of consignment value exceeding 50,000 rupees in relation to a supply or for reasons other than supply. Could be for supply or for non-supply, this which we have discussed. Due to inward supply from an unregistered person. The unregistered person, he cannot, he will not charge GST. He does not have access to e-way bill, but you are a receiver. You need goods from this unregistered person. So you will raise a e-way bill when the supplier is unregistered. Okay. The registered person who causes movement of goods, who causes such movement of goods shall furnish the information relating to said goods in Part A of GST EWB1. So what is the form for e-way bill? GST EWB01. Now this has two parts, Part A and Part B. Part A is what the consignor will mention. So the consignor will provide the details in Part A before commencement of such movement. Okay. So it's not that after commencement he can raise it. That will not have any relevance. Before movement of goods, he will have to raise this e-way bill in Part A. Then Part B will be either he inputs or the transporter puts in the details, and then the e-way bill gets generated. Once the e-way bill is completed and it's got generated, a e-way bill number comes in. That e-way bill number you have to mention in the invoice. Okay. The information is to be furnished prior to the commencement. E-way bill has to be raised whether the movement is in relation to supply or movement other than supply. So these are the only things that when you should raise it. Then who causes movement? Okay, why the thing is required is the registered person. It says that the term is the registered person who causes the movement shall raise the invoice. Who shall raise the invoice? The person who causes the movement. Who is the person who's causing the movement? If the supplier is registered and undertakes to transport the goods, okay, supplier is registered and he undertakes to transport the goods, then the movement is caused by the supplier. In case the recipient undertakes to transport or arrange the transport, then the recipient, the movement is caused by the recipient. Because why this is relevant is who causes the movement is the person who will raise the e-way bill. If the supplier is registered and he undertakes, then he is the person who should raise the e-way bill. If the supplier says that I have no responsibility and the recipient arranges for the transport, then the recipient will have to arrange for the e-way bill. In case the goods are supplied by unregistered supplier to a recipient who is registered, the movement shall be said to be caused by such recipient. जो unregistered person है उसके access ही नहीं है, so he will not raise. The recipient है, he will be the person who is involved in such movement and he will raise a e-way bill. Take this scenario. There is a registered person and there is a registered seller and a registered buyer. Supply is made by the registered seller to the registered buyer. Okay. Then either party may generate, because if supplier agrees that he will transport the goods, then the supplier, the seller will raise the e-way bill. Agar the buyer says that I will arrange for the transport, I will raise the e-way bill. And it is not necessary that if the transport is by the receiver, only he has to arrange. One of them can arrange. But it should not be that two e-way bills are raised. That will be a conflict. So only one e-way bill has to be raised for one movement. For movement of goods from A to B, either A can raise it or B can raise it. Second instance is registered seller selling to an unregistered buyer or a foreign buyer in case of export, right? Because if you call it as an unregistered buyer, or it could be a case of foreign buyer because foreigner will not be registered in India. Then in case supply is made by the registered seller to an unregistered buyer, then the registered seller will generate the e-way bill. Okay, the registered seller will raise the e-way bill. Third case is an unregistered seller selling it to a registered buyer or a registered importer of goods. Then the supply is made by unregistered seller to a registered buyer. Suppose the registered importer of goods is in India. That's the instance in the third case. Movement is said to be caused by the registered recipient and e-way bill is to be generated by the registered recipient. Right? All the three scenarios are covered here. What if the recipient, supplier, and transporter all are unregistered? So transporter will be unregistered under GST, that's fine, but he has to get registered as a transporter. He has to get the transin number. So the liability is on the transporter because he's the person who is having the goods and getting the goods moved. So the transporter will have to raise a e-way bill. If the value of the goods is 50,000 exactly, no need of e-way bill, yes. If it exceeds 50,000, only then. So if the value of the goods exactly, then no e-way bill. What if the three persons are not registered? Then as per law, there is mandate to get registered in GST for e-way bill. No, for e-way bill, there is no mandate. Like in our reverse charge, if you're an unregistered person, but you are doing some reverse charge on which you have to pay GST, right? Then you will have to register. सर एक्सप्लेन वन टाइम इन हिंदी, ठीक है. सो जो ई-वे बिल का कॉन्सेप्ट है वो ये है कि जब सप्लायर और रिसीवर दोनों रजिस्टर्ड है तो दोनों में से एक बंदा इधर सप्लायर ई-वे बिल रेस कर सकता है या रेसिपिएंट ई-वे बिल रेस कर सकता है. कब होगा वो? जब सप्लायर गुड सप्लाई करता है, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का डिटेल्स उसके पास है, तब वो सप्लाई करेगा. और जब वो ई-वे बिल रेस करेगा और रिसिपिएंट का ट्रांसपोर्टर है, तब वो रेस करेगा. करेक्ट. सो रिसिपिएंट कर सकता है या सप्लायर कर सकता है, दोनों में से कोई एक. अगर दोनों में से एक अनरजिस्टर्ड है, जैसे सेकेंड केस में सप्लायर रजिस्टर्ड है और रिसीवर अनरजिस्टर्ड है, ठीक है, तो सप्लायर रेस करेगा. और थर्ड केस में जब सप्लायर अनरजिस्टर्ड है और रिसीवर रजिस्टर्ड है, तो फिर रिसीवर रजिस्टर करेगा. फोर्थ केस ऐसे हो सकता है जो यहाँ पे नहीं दिया है कि सप्लायर भी अनरजिस्टर्ड है, रिसीवर भी अनरजिस्टर्ड है, तो उस केस में ट्रांसपोर्टर उसका ट्रांजिन लॉग इन करके ई-वे बिल का उसका लॉग इन रहेगा, क्योंकि हर ट्रांसपोर्टर को ई-वे बिल का लॉग इन रहना चाहिए. वो रेस करेगा ई-वे बिल सप्लायर के बिहाफ. ठीक है, तो ये बताता है ई-वे बिल कौन रेस कर सकता है. What is consignment value? We'll come to that also. What is consignment value? I'll come to that. If the recipient is unregistered and supplier is registered, but the recipient is taking delivery, then who will generate the bill? Still supplier will generate it, because the supplier will be more primarily responsible because he is dispatching the goods, right? Since he is dispatching the goods and he cannot say that recipient is registered or registered, I don't know. He knows that recipient is unregistered, so he will have to raise a e-way bill. E-way bill is required in case of exempted goods also, any movement of goods. So even in case of exempted goods, e-way bill will be required. If there is a movement of goods more than rupees 50,000 by other than motor vehicle, is this case required to generate e-way bill? We'll come to the exceptions, but okay, 1 minute. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Kiran, I am from Karnataka. So when the movement happens from one unregistered to another unregistered, the transporter will log in and he will generate the e-way bill. Can e-way bill be considered as evidence? No, it cannot be considered as a evidence. It only helps to say that, okay, I have done a transaction. I've mentioned the details in e-way bill. The e-way bill doesn't mean that it acts as a evidence that other person can claim the ITC. The evidence, what you're asking, Nistala, is from a different perspective, right? So ITC as such cannot be used over here. Yeah, freight can be paid by one party and e-way bill can be raised by another party. Yes, that is still possible because Payment to the transporter and raising a e-way bill are two separate things. Yes, in case of handicraft goods less than 50,000, it is required. Yes, that's what we had seen, right? So in case of a handicraft goods person, a person who is dealing in handicraft goods, he is not required to take registration. Like we had read under 24, section 24, compulsory registration, that a person who is transporting goods below above 40 lakhs also, or below the limits also, he has to take registration. One person is the handicraft person who is dealing in handicraft goods of interstate sale. He is not required to take registration, but he will have to raise a e-way bill. So for him, even if it is less than 50,000, he will have to raise it. In some state, e-way bill is necessary if the value of goods is more than 1 lakh. Yeah, I think in Maharashtra, there is a amendment. They've said that up to 1 lakh rupees, you don't have to raise it. 50,000, more than 50,000, is it compulsory? Yes. If it is more than 50,000, then every transaction you have to raise a e-way bill. Does e-way bill value includes GST? Yes, it includes the value of GST. If company transport the goods to branch in same state or different state, then e-way bill required? Yes, because within the state also, you will have to raise a e-way bill. It could be separate registration or same registration. If it is same registration, you will still mention supplied from this registration number to another registration. Location will be different, right? So you will have to raise a e-way bill in that case also. If you make an interstate sale, there is necessary to carry e-way bill. Yes, interstate or intrastate, both it is necessary. Suppose in my single truck, there are 2 to 3 parties goods and there are for transport. Is it mandated to get the e-way bill for each party? So the transporter will have to ask for the e-way bill because the supplier's primary responsibility is to raise a e-way bill. He will raise a e-way bill and the transporter will mention the details of the transportation number, the vehicle number for transporting the goods. Okay. Now, if he is transporting in one truck multiple consignments, then everybody, individual person's responsibility it is to generate the e-way bill. If they have not raised, then the responsibility is on the transporter that he should generate the e-way bill if the value is more than 50,000 for that invoice, because he will anyways have to carry the invoice. He cannot escape from carrying invoice. Since he has the invoice, he will see that if the supplier is not raised the e-way bill and the value is crossing 50,000 rupees, then he will have to raise the e-way bill. Okay. Now, what somebody been asking that what is the consignment value? So you have just said consignment value. Let's understand that the value which is determined in accordance with provisions of section 15, the valuation rules which we have read, where the parties are mostly unrelated because the at the time of transportation, you cannot make an evaluation, right? So the value, what is there in the invoice, that will be considered as the value. So, but for all theoretical reasons, what is the value we should consider is the value which is determined in accordance with provisions of section 15, the value which is declared in an invoice, a bill of supply or a delivery challan. Invoice, we know that when you make a sale invoice, when a composite dealer supplies something, then he is not charging GST. He is only giving a bill of supply. Then the value what is declared in that bill of supply. And in case it is a non-supply transaction, then the delivery challan. So one of these documents has to be there along with the e-way bill, and the value what is declared in these has to be considered. And it also includes the central tax, state tax, union territory tax. So the 50,000 consignment value, what I was saying, that value is the gross value plus the taxes. So the value plus taxes has to be considered for the consignment value. So if your example of 48,000 is the value, plus taxes, if I add, then it's crossing 50,000. Then e-way bill is required or no? It is required. What it excludes the value of exempt supply of goods where the invoice is issued in respect of both exempt and taxable supply. If it's the consolidated invoice for both taxable and exempted, then it has to be excluded. But simple for exempted goods also, e-way bill is required. Okay. But there is a rule which says that there is no requirement for e-way bill for exempted goods. So e-way bill is not required for transport of goods except exempted under the rules or notification. So for exempted goods, you do not have to carry it. Delivery challan. Delivery challan is another document, like how you have an invoice and bill, right? Similarly, in the tax invoice chapter, we have discussed what is a delivery challan installa. Please refer that. When do you have to raise a delivery challan? Because on delivery challan, we don't pay tax. We pay taxes on the invoice or debit note. So a delivery challan is a separate document for to acknowledgement that there is a movement of goods. Delivery challan is used. Okay. Consignment value simple है नेंशी. Consignment है कि ई-वे बिल कब रेस करना चाहिए जब 50,000 से ज्यादा वैल्यू हो जाता है. हर जगह जब हम वैल्यू का टर्म यूज करते हैं उसका मतलब होता है टैक्सेबल वैल्यू. करेक्ट कि टैक्सेबल वैल्यू इतना है या एग्रीगेट वैल्यू उतना है तो आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा. वो एग्रीगेट वैल्यू में आप टैक्सेस नहीं मिलाते हो. ठीक है. लेकिन इस केस में ई-वे बिल में स्पेसिफिकली दिया गया है कि जो भी वैल्यू सेक्शन 15 में है, मतलब वैल्यूएशन के हिसाब से जो वैल्यू है वो आपका कंसाइनमेंट वैल्यू है. इधर आपका इनवॉइस गलत है तो फिर कंसाइनमेंट वैल्यू तो वैल्यूएशन रूल्स निकालिए. लेकिन आपको पता है कि आपका इनवॉइस वैल्यू सही है तो आप इनवॉइस वैल्यू लेंगे. अब इनवॉइस में रहेगा वैल्यू ऑफ द गुड्स प्लस जीएसटी. तो जो भी जीएसटी वैल्यू है उससे भी जोड़ के उससे उसको ऐड करके जो वैल्यू रहेगा टोटल वैल्यू, अगर वो वैल्यू 50,000 से ज्यादा है तो आपको ई-वे बिल रेस करना पड़ेगा. सपोज मेरा वैल्यू ऑफ गुड्स है 30,000 रुपीज प्लस मैं 18% टैक्स लगाता हूँ. सपोज समझिए 30,000 पे 8,000 रुपये टैक्स आता है. सो 38,000 है, वो 50 के नीचे, इसके ऊपर आपको ई-वे बिल की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन 45,000 है और 9,000 रुपये टैक्स है तो हो जाएगा 54,000. अगर आप बिफोर जीएसटी लेंगे तो फिर गलत हो जाएगा. आपको कंसाइनमेंट वैल्यू ग्रॉस वैल्यू प्लस जीएसटी लेना पड़ेगा. 45,000 प्लस 9,000 54,000 जो 90,000 क्रॉस करता है वो है आपका कंसाइनमेंट वैल्यू. ठीक है. तो 50,000 क्रॉस कर रहा है तो आपको ई-वे बिल रेज करना पड़ेगा. क्या एक्सक्लूड करना है? वैल्यू ऑफ एग्जेम्प्टेड सप्लाई. जो भी एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई करते हो उसको ऐड करने की जरूरत नहीं है. सो एग्जेम्प्टेड वैल्यूज इज नॉट टू बी इंक्लूडेड. क्लियर नेंची? E-way bill to be generated special category? Yes. Even in special category goods, the value is 50,000 rupees. There is no exemption like how you have for registration. तो registration के लिए limits अलग है और इसके लिए limits एक ही है. तो हेमलता, there is no difference in limits under e-way bill even for special category states. Can composition dealer generate e-way bill? Yes, he too can. E-way bill is required in case of exempted goods or no? It is not required. So, Mitesh, if the unregistered supplier is not collecting GST, but the movement has to get tracked, right? Now, what if he's made a mistake? So we don't know that, right? So if the movement is tracked, then the officers, the department can then check whether it's registered, unregistered, if it is actually exempted or no, whether he's unregistered. So if he keeps generating e-way bill, no, so if an unregistered dealer, he is not registered under GST, he will not raise the e-way bill. The receiver will raise the e-way bill. So they will track saying that how much value of supplies you're taking from unregistered dealers, and then they can evaluate it. Even in case of transportation between branches, it is required. If both buyer and seller are unregistered, निंची फिर जो ट्रांसपोर्टर है वो ई-वे बिल रेज करेगा. नेक्स्ट, ई-वे बिल अगर 50,000 के नीचे हो जाए तब भी रेज करना पड़ेगा. कब? When there is a interstate transfer of goods by principal to job worker. Okay, जब प्रिंसिपल जॉब वर्कर कुछ सप्लाई करता है तो 50 के नीचे वैल्यू है तब भी उसको रेज करना पड़ेगा. और हमने हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स का पढ़ाई है दैट इफ देयर इज एनी इंटरस्टेट ट्रांसफर ऑफ हैंडीक्राफ्ट गुड्स by a person who is exempted from obtaining registration, he will have to still raise a e-way bill, and the registered person or the transporter may at his option generate e-way bill even if the value is 50,000 rupees. So first is principal to job worker, second is handicraft goods, third is voluntary. Job worker, handicraft goods, voluntary. Consignment के केस में less than 50,000 but after GST it would increase 50,000, right? Still it is required, yes, क्योंकि अगर आप GST ऐड करते हो तो उसका बढ़ जाता है वैल्यू, so you will have to raise it. Is it quantity based or price based? Value based ना, वैल्यू का 50,000 रुपए बताया है ना, so if value is more than 50,000 rupees तो आपको रेज करना पड़ेगा. Now what happens in case of a bill to ship to model? Bill to ship to में supplier is in Tamil Nadu, okay? So customer B is who is my primary customer. Now this customer says that you deliver the goods to C. So the supplier delivers the goods to C, right? Now where is the goods being supplied from? Tamil Nadu. So e-way bill यहाँ से start होगा. Now where are the goods delivered to? Goods are getting delivered to customer C. I will raise an invoice to B and deliver it to C. Bill to B and ship to C. So e-way bill will be for movement from Tamil Nadu to customer C. So I will raise one e-way bill from Tamil Nadu to Gujarat. Supplier A to customer C, one e-way bill. Because where is the movement happening? From supplier to customer. So ship to जहाँ पे हो रहा है वहाँ वो road पे I will raise a e-way bill. Okay. And customer B, I have raised an invoice to B. So in my invoice, I will tell bill to B and ship to C. E-way bill I will raise from Tamil Nadu to Gujarat. Now, when I bill to customer B, he will raise another invoice. For that invoice, there is no movement. For that, e-way bill is not required. So your e-way bill will be required. Your e-way bill will not be required. Okay. So when transporting from bill to ship to transaction, I have to raise one e-way bill. Now let's take the example with the same question, same transaction which we had discussed in a bill to ship to transaction. Bill to, now we'll take this example with different states. From Maharashtra, I have a contract from Karnataka person. He says you ship it to Tamil Nadu person. So I will ship it. So e-way bill also I will raise to the prime hardware itself. So bill to ship to cases. Now who has this control? The control is there with Ganesh traders for movement of goods, but with the customer, the control is with the Maruti traders. That is the person who is told it, right? So e-way bill in this case can be raised either by the person who is transporting the goods or the person who is authorizing me to sell the goods. So if Karnataka person has authorized it, either he can raise it or the person who bills it, he can raise it. So if the person says, okay, I am delivering the goods, I have the vehicle number, now you give me Prime Hardware's address, I will raise the e-way bill, because he will anyway have to mention the address in the invoice, because invoice में bill to और ship to details दोनों आएंगे. So I will bill to Karnataka and ship to Prime Hardware. So I have the details. I will raise the e-way bill. Or Karnataka person says, no, I will have the control on the e-way bill. So I will raise a e-way bill. He will raise a e-way bill with none of his details being mentioned. The details mentioned will be of Ganesh Traders, bill to, bill from, and ship to Prime Hardwares. Okay. Similarly, within the state also, or within where the supplier and the customer are in the same state, still there will be same thing. That option will be either the person who is selling the goods or the person on whose behalf the goods have been sold. One of them can raise it. Clear? Understanding till here? Bhaskar, 100 kilometers rule, yes, there is there. It has become 200 kilometers rule. We will come to that. Yes, e-way bill is required for any supply between state branches also. हाँ मयूर. सो व्हाट क्या बोल रहा था यहाँ पे, जब बिल टू शिप टू ट्रांजैक्शन होता है तब ई वे बिल कौन रेज करेगा. आप ये ट्रांजैक्शन तो समझ गए हैं कि जब मैंने सप्लायर को बोला है कि आप मुझे सप्लाई कीजिए, तो उसने सप्लाई शुरू किया, तब मैंने बता दिया कि आप डायरेक्टली मेरे कस्टमर को सप्लाई कर दीजिए. ठीक है. तब इस केस में ई वे बिल तो जरूरी है. वैल्यू ऑफ गुड्स मोर देन 50,000 रुपीज है. तब ई वे बिल कौन रेस करेगा. ऑप्शन 1 बताता है कि ये गणेश ट्रेडर्स बिल रेस कर सकता है. बिल तो गणेश ट्रेडर्स ही रेस करेगा. इसके नाम पे, मारुति ट्रेडर्स के नाम पे. तो ई वे बिल कैन बी रेस्ड फ्रॉम गणेश ट्रेडर्स or that is the original supplier, or it could be raised by the person on whose behalf the goods are being moved. किसके कहने पे ये गुड्स कर्नाटका पहुंच रहे हैं. मारुति ट्रेडर्स के नाम पे. करेक्ट. मारुति ट्रेडर्स के कहने पे. तो मारुति ट्रेडर्स भी ई वे बिल रेस कर सकता है. ठीक है. सो ई वे बिल इधर ये रेस करेगा या फिर ये रेस करेगा, वो कहना चाहते हैं हम. ओके. अभी ई वे बिल के डिटेल्स कौन फिल करेगा, कहाँ पे फिल करेगा. ई वे बिल्स का अलग से पोर्टल है, ई वे बिल. राइट. उसमें आपको पार्ट ए और पार्ट बी दिखेंगे. पार्ट ए के डिटेल्स क्या बताता है. आपको मेंशन करना है जीएसटी आई एन ऑफ द सप्लायर, द प्लेस ऑफ डिस्पैच, द जीएसटी आई एन ऑफ द रिसिपिएंट एंड प्लेस ऑफ डिलीवरी. अगर जीएसटी नॉट अवेलेबल है तो नॉट अप्लीकेबल ऑप्शन भी आता है. प्लेस ऑफ डिलीवरी. ओके. सप्लायर और रिसिपिएंट, यहाँ पे क्लियरली वर्ड्स लिखा है कि रिसिपिएंट, नॉट द रिसीवर. मतलब बिल टू शिप टू केस में जिसको आप बिल करोगे उसकी डिटेल मेंशन करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. जीएसटी ऑफ द सप्लायर, जीएसटी ऑफ द रिसिपिएंट. डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर, क्यों डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर बोला है, क्योंकि डॉक्यूमेंट कुछ भी हो सकता है. इधर इनवॉइस, टैक्स इनवॉइस हो सकता है, बिल ऑफ सप्लाई, या तो फिर डिलीवरी चलान. वन ऑफ दोस डॉक्यूमेंट कैन बी देयर. उसका डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर, फिर डेट ऑफ द डॉक्यूमेंट, व्हाट इज द वैल्यू ऑफ द गुड्स, HSN कोड, क्योंकि हर इनवॉइस पे आप 6 डिजिट या डिजिट HSN कोड मेंशन करते हो, सो HSN कोड. एंड रीजन फॉर ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, इज इट फॉर सेल, is it for consignment, is it for movement for other than supply, is it for job work. आपको reason for transportation mention करना पड़ेगा. Then part B will be vehicle number for road. मतलब part 1 details invoice में मिल जाएगा. This should be furnished by the registered person who is causing movement of goods of consignment of value exceeding 50,000 rupees. The person who is registered, he will mention this details. And part B will be furnished by the person who is transporting the goods. क्योंकि जब मैं लॉरी वाले को देता हूं, क्योंकि यहाँ पे डिटेल्स क्या पूछता है, वेरी सिंपल, व्हीकल नंबर फॉर रोड एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर. व्हीकल नंबर फॉर रोड एंड ट्रांसपोर्ट डॉक्यूमेंट नंबर. बस दो चीज. ये किसके पास रहेगा, ये तो ट्रांसपोर्टर के पास रहेगा. नाउ इफ आई विल गिव इट टू हिम, आई डोंट नो द व्हीकल नंबर, so he will have to enter this. Again, he will tell me the vehicle number saying that this is the vehicle number through which I will transport. If I know that, then I can put this detail and generate it. क्योंकि only inputting the details in part A is not sufficient. Part A and part B, if it is completed, only then e-way bill gets generated. So if it's an organized transporter, he will mention the details in part B. If he is not mentioning, then I will have to mention it. Because without e-way bill, I cannot move the goods, and without that person entering, my goods will get stuck. So I will have to ask him the transport number and then generate the e-way bill. And without e-way bill, I cannot move the goods. So if the transporter is reliable and he will mention the details, you could rely on him. Otherwise, you will get the vehicle details from the transporter and enter the details. Part A and part B, once I fill it, only then e-way bills gets generated. Job worker, Mayur, we have discussed the job worker, right? That a person who does any processing on your goods, he is a job worker. Give gold, he will convert it into jewelry and give you, he's a gold jewelry job worker. So each business like that has some persons who will do special processes. They are called job workers. Aisha, we've understood, right? So e-way bill is not only for goods, it's for any movement of goods. So when you do any service and if goods are involved in it, still you will raise a e-way bill. Okay. Now, information to be furnished in e-way bill. What all information we will submit? Information in part A may be furnished is by the transporter on an authorization received by the register supplier. So we know the information what is to be furnished. Now the transporter also can furnish. Generally, it's the register person, but the transporter can submit it. By the e-commerce operator or the courier agency where the goods are transported or supplied through an e-commerce operator. So if it is through an e-commerce operator, then the e-commerce operator will have to fill in. Once the goods are ready and transport details are known, the users can enter part B details and generate the e-way bill for movement of goods. मतलब आपको जब ट्रांसपोर्टर का डिटेल्स पता है, then you can enter it and generate the e-way bill. But can't be that you generate half e-way bill. That's not possible. पूरा details fill करने के बाद ही application जैसे लगेगा, like that also. Similar to that, if all the details are mentioned, only then e-way bill will get generated. नहीं, गुंजन, ट्रांसपोर्टर को जीएसटी कभी पे नहीं करना पड़ेगा. उसको सिर्फ ई-वे बिल रेज करना पड़ेगा. He will not be responsible for payment of any taxes. Now, e-way bill, who is mandatorily required to generate? If the goods are transported by a registered person who is causing movement of goods, then the registered person, either supplier or recipient, they will have to enter the details. If its goods are handed over to a transporter by road and the transporter is causing the movement, then part A will be by the registered person and part B by the transporter. Okay. And in cases where registered person is not generating it, the transporter itself will input the details in part A. Okay. If goods is being transported by an air vessel or train, then again the registered person only will raise it. E-way bill in special circumstances, what happens in special cases is when the goods are transported through railways, okay, then the railways will carry the invoice. Only the invoice cookie, we have seen that in case of transportation of goods through a normal movement of goods through a lorry or any kind of conveyance, part A will be filled by the supplier and part B will fill by the transporter. Now, in this case of part B, it's a government. So railways एक का e-way bill fill नहीं करेगा. So what they've said is you will get a railway receipt. Okay. So आपको as a supplier, you have given your goods to the railway. Railway is transporting it. So railways के case में exception हो जाता है कि railways will on transportation of railways, e-way bill is required to be generated, but it need not be accompanied along with it. So there are two things. One is generating it and one is accompanying it along with the transportation. So in case of railways, it is an exception that in case of railway transport, it is not required to be accompanied, but it has to be generated. Because I do not know the transport number. And if you see part B here, it says vehicle number for road or the transport document number. So here vehicle number for road will not be there because train number I cannot mention. So I will have to mention the transport document number. That is the railway receipt number. So RR number aega, I will have to take that and railway receipt will be given by the railways. The goods carriage jab karega, they will give a railway receipt. That number I have to mention in the e-way bill and generated. So e-way bill will be post uploading the goods in the railway. And such e-way bill has to be produced at the time of delivery. So railways will not dispatch the goods at the time of its destination, saying that we will give it to anybody. So that time you will have to produce e-way bill and give it to the railways. They will check it and only then you will get it. Okay, so only in case of railways there's an exception. In all other cases, before movement of goods, your e-way bill should be in hand. If it is not in hand, you cannot move the goods. That will be termed as illegal movement, and the any officer who is checking that can confiscate the goods. The e-way bill number shown both register supply and recipient GST portal. Yes, it will show in both the places. So once you raise a e-way bill, okay, and you mention my GST number, you have raised it and shown my GST number in my portal also, it will show that e-way bill has been raised. If it is not my transporter, if it is not my supplier, but somebody else's supplier, he's given my GST number wrongly, I can go and cancel it. So there is a time limit. Within 24 hours, I can go and cancel it. After that, I cannot cancel. But later on also, I can prove it that I did not get any goods from him. He's mentioned it wrongly. I can always tell it, right? That is possible. But if possible, you should go and check the e-way bill portal and cancel it if it is not your goods. So supply and recipients, we have put only on they affect the transportation of goods respectively, right? Okay. Now, e-way bill when part B is not mandatory. E-way bill has two things, part A and part B. Now, e-way bill part A is mandatory, part B is not mandatory. So there are no cases that e-way bill is not mandatory that we are not talking. We're talking only when part B of the e-way bill is not mandatory. When may not be furnished when the goods are transported for a distance of up to 50 kilometers within the state. Within the state, you're moving up to 50 kilometers from where? Not every 50 kilometers is out of e-way bill. No. When you're moving less than 50 kilometers from your place of business to the place of the business of the transporter. Your transporter's place is not within your reach. You have to go to the transporter and deliver it. If the transporter comes well and good, when the transporter is at place X, you have to take the goods and give it to the transporter's place, right? In that case, e-way bill part B is not required, but part A is still required. Okay. And again, if he's delivered somewhere and the receiver has to come and pick it up from the transporter's place. So from the place of business of the transporter, finally to the business of the consignee. There also, if it is below 50 kilometers, then part B is not mandatory. Where 50 kilometers is very huge, right? Because the place of transport will not be so far. And generally the transporter comes and picks it up. Because if you have to deliver it, then you will transport it through your own vehicles. Correct? But they've still given an exception saying that if you have to move the goods to the transporter and the transporter is placed to the delivery place, if it is in the same state and up to 50 kilometers, then part B is not mandatory, right? So what does it mean that if I transport either through a transporter or I transport through my own vehicle also, I will still need this e-way bill. A shopkeeper trading in goods and his turnover is 12 lakhs. He wants to register under GST. Can he do so? Yes, he can do it. Voluntary registration, he can still do it. He can apply for registration. Okay. Now transfer of goods from one conveyance to another, right? So till now we have understood the easy part of it. Now we'll get into the complicated part of it. So e-way bill we have understood till now. If we have understood till now, we'll be able to proceed with other complicated aspects because now it is all little complicated. We'll take a break. Before that, if you have any questions, let's answer that. Then we'll have an early break today. Okay. If there's any question, you could post it. We'll take a 10 minutes break and we'll come back at 7:25. A lot of questions with respect to this 50 kilometer. First question is, please explain this 50 kilometer again. Okay. So the 50 kilometer provision says that if the transportation of goods happens from the supplier's location to the transporter's location, which is less than up to 50 kilometers, then you don't have to mention part B of the e-way bill, because part B has the transporter's details. For doing the transport itself, we are going to the place of the transporter. So there it is not required, right? Not in normal cases. In normal cases, if I'm doing 1 kilometer transport also, I will have to have part A and part B both. And in case of, again, the other exception is from the transporter's place to the person recipient's place. That movement also is exempted because there it is for ultimate delivery and transportation is already completed. It's just the last leg which has to happen. That is what this 50 kilometers says. So if I'm transporting from one state to another state, which I'm in the border states, and the distance is 15 kilometers, still I will need the e-way bill. Okay, full e-way bill. Okay. Is the e-way bill carrying electronically is compliance of provision of e-way bill? Yes. Even if you carry the number or carry it electronically, still it is in compliance. The number of the e-way bill has to be there. Who keeps the e-way bill after movement? So it is there electronically, and the supplier has to keep it, because supplier has to ultimately prove that he has transported the goods, he has raised the invoice, and the e-way bill is generated. Okay. So it is generally seen that every movement requires. So who occasions the movement? If the recipient has its transportation arranged, then he will have to keep the e-way bill. But the number has to be mentioned in the invoice. Okay. Supplier is supplying from his place of business to 50 kilometers within state. Then buyer is picking that goods. He also has 50 kilometers to go to his place of business. So is it possible without filing part B e-way bill? No. That's only in case of a transporter. In this case, you are doing your own transport. So this exception will not come to you, Sangeetwani. It will come only if it's a place of the transporter. In this case, you are doing your own transport. So this 50 kilometer exemption will not come to you. Janapati, your answer, you would have got it. Please tell me what is your answer now based on our discussion. लास्ट 2 लाइंस को हिंदी में समझा दीजिए. ये कौन सी, ये वाले? ठीक है, 2 लाइन पूरा ही है, 2 लाइन में तो पूरा है. आपको ई-वे बिल 2 पार्ट है, पार्ट ए और पार्ट बी. इसको ठीक से समझ लीजिए, क्योंकि अब जब हम भी कभी भी हम आगे बात करेंगे, सिर्फ पार्ट ए और पार्ट बी बात करेंगे. ई-वे बिल है पार्ट ए और पार्ट बी में. ई-वे बिल पार्ट ए जो है वो ये है, ठीक है, जिसका डिटेल सप्लायर को फिल करना है. पार्ट बी का डिटेल्स है जो रिसीवर को, जो ट्रांसपोर्टर को फिल करना है. ठीक है. अब जीएसटी में एक एक्सेप्शन है कि भैया आप तो पार्ट ए फिल कर लो, लेकिन पार्ट बी आपको फिल करने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि आपके पास पार्ट बी का डिटेल्स है ही नहीं, आप कैसे फिल करोगे. तो उसके लिए उन्होंने कहा कि आप पार्ट ए फिल कर दीजिए और पार्ट बी आप फिल मत कीजिए. कहाँ पे वो, यहाँ पे जब वो बोलता है कि आप जो गुड्स ट्रांसपोर्ट कर रहे हो आपके लोकेशन से ट्रांसपोर्टर के लोकेशन तक, ठीक है, आपके लोकेशन से ट्रांसपोर्टर के लोकेशन तक, जब आप दोनों के बीच में 50 किलोमीटर की डिस्टेंस है, तब आप ई-वे बिल पार्ट बी जनरेट करने की जरूरत नहीं. और जब वो ट्रांसपोर्टर ने, आप वहां पे चले गए, फिर आपको मिल गया, तब पार्ट बी जनरेट करोगे, फिर ई-वे बिल जनरेट हो जाएगा. करेक्ट, फिर से दोहराता हूँ, मैं यहाँ पे हूँ, यहाँ से 20 किलोमीटर तक ट्रांसपोर्टर की जगह है, तो मैं यहाँ से वहां लेके जाऊंगा, लेकिन पार्ट बी में मेंशन करने के लिए ट्रांसपोर्ट का व्हीकल नंबर चाहिए, मेरे पास उसका व्हीकल नंबर नहीं है। अब मेरा व्हीकल नंबर में मेंशन करूंगा, फिर वो कैसे चेंज करेगा, इसकी वजह से आपके ट्रांसपोर्ट में आप लेके जाइए, ट्रांसपोर्टर की जगह पे अनलोड कर दीजिए। अब ट्रांसपोर्टर आपको व्हीकल नंबर दे देगा, तो आप एंटर कर दीजिए, या फिर ट्रांसपोर्टर ही पार्ट बी एंटर करके ई वे बिल जनरेट कर देगा। करेक्ट, सफर शुरू हो गया, ई वे बिल जनरेट हो गया। ई वे बिल जनरेट होने के बाद जब वो ट्रांसपोर्टर दिल्ली पहुंच गया, दिल्ली में उसने अपने गोडाउन पे अनलोड कर दिया है। अब उसके गोडाउन से जो मेरा कस्टमर है उसको आके पिकअप करना है, तो उसका ट्रांसपोर्टर का दिल्ली ऑफिस और मेरे रिसीवर का अगेन 25 किलोमीटर का डिस्टेंस है, तो उस फासले को भी पार्ट बी एंटर करने की जरूरत नहीं, लेकिन ये ई वे बिल ही काम आ जाएगा। करेक्ट, तो ये पार्ट बी बोलता है कि ये दो लेग्स क्यों आपको पार्ट बी भरने की जरूरत नहीं है, सिर्फ ये बोलता है, ऐसा नहीं बोलता कि पार्ट ए भी एग्जेम्प्टेड है, ऐसा नहीं, आपको पार्ट ए तो भरना ही पड़ेगा। ठीक है, विद इन इंट्रा स्टेट इफ लेस देन 50 किलोमीटर्स, part A and part B both required. Where there is no transporters thing getting involved, then intrastate, even less than 50 kilometers, part A and part B both required. E-waybill is optional or mandatory? E-waybill is mandatory. Unlike other things where we said it is optional, registration below 20 lakhs, it's optional. But यहाँ पे e-waybill is mandatory. So is it mandatory to furnish the details because movement of goods from one state to another state? Not for that, because of the distance, Janpati, that if the transportation happens even for 1 kilometer, you still have to raise a e-way bill. ई-वे बिल किसके पोर्टल पे शो होगा? सप्लायर और रिसिपेंट का अगर रजिस्टर्ड है, आप रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर डालते हो, तो दोनों के पोर्टल में शो होगा। और सर आफ्टर 50 किलोमीटर, अगर 50 किलोमीटर ज्यादा फैसला है आपका, तो फिर आपको ट्रांसपोर्टर का व्हीकल नंबर पूछ के वो डालना ही पड़ेगा। इफ मेनी ट्रांसपोर्टर्स आर इन्वॉल्व, वही तो हम डिस्कस करेंगे हरिंदर, विल जस्ट डिस्कस दैट। Transfer of goods from one conveyance to another. See, you ask the question and here is the answer. What happens in case of breakage of vehicle? Everything is correct. Part A, Part B is filled. E-way bill is right. Invoice is given. Now the goods are moving and the vehicles got broken. What happens in that case? Or the transport vehicle has started movement on its way. The vehicle का रिपेयर हो गया, टायर पंचर हो गया, रुक गया वो। रिपेयर करने के लिए टायर पंचर हो तो ठीक है, 2 घंटे में हो जाएगा, बड़ा रिपेयर है तो पूरा दिन लग जाएगा। What happens if multiple conveyance are involved? Right? I'm transporting from one conveyance. Now this transporter has a facility कि ये स्टेट तक जाएगा, स्टेट बॉर्डर्स तक, वहां से दूसरा ट्रक लेगा। So what happens in that case? In such cases, the consigner or the recipient or the transporter can update the vehicle number, because whenever you change the goods, the main reason of e-way bill is that the movement will get cross-verified with the vehicle number. If it is in a different vehicle and the number mentioned in the e-way bill is different, confiscate कर लेंगे officers. So you cannot expect कि trans e-way bill में एक number है and the actual delivery is on a different vehicle. It should be on the same vehicle whose number is mentioned in the e-way bill. Now I have generated the e-way bill with vehicle number 1234. Now this vehicle has moved, फिर change हो गया 2346. So the transporter, because control is with transporter, the transporter will update the e-way bill part B me, saying that there is a transfer and this is the new vehicle number and this is the new vehicle. Okay, but if the transporter informs me, then I will have to update it, and or if I am aware of it. So the information in part B can be updated if there is a change in vehicle number. गाड़ी पंचर हो गया, गाड़ी खराब हो गया, उसने दूसरी गाड़ी पे डाल दिया है, तो फिर दूसरे गाड़ी का नंबर पार्ट बी में आना चाहिए। but it has to be updated within the validity period of e-way bill. Validity period हम अभी समझेंगे. Any updation, because वो valid ही 24 घंटे तक है, तो फिर मैं 24 घंटे तक ही उसको अपडेट कर सकता हूँ. After that I cannot update it. That's logical कि I can update it within the time limit and not beyond it. ठीक है. How to deal with specific situations? We'll discuss with various situations. If there are multiple conveyances against a single invoice. There is one invoice, there are multiple conveyance. Like we had spoken about the example of elevator, right? एक बड़ा elevator है, लेकिन उसके लिए invoice तो एक raise करूंगा, conveyance अलग अलग है. So we have to raise a delivery challan against each conveyance, and that many number of e-way bills will be generated as many number of delivery challan. So it is not that one invoice, one e-way bill, ऐसा नहीं है. It is on number of conveyance. Each delivery challan, each conveyance, each delivery challan is separate e-way bill. Clear? So please understand that it is not that one invoice, one e-way bill. How much of a conveyance you have, based on that, you will have that many number of e-way bills, right? So we had this example that when you are getting a contract for lift, I am Kone Elevators, I will raise one invoice for lift for 30 lakhs, right? Because for me, it is one lift. Now I cannot sell that lift in the lift form. By 10 floors, I cannot move the 10 floors vertically, right? Horizontally. I'll have to break it up and sell it in semi-knockdown condition with parts. So this parts, I will segregate it differently and deliver it in separate consignments, right? So each consignment, I will attach a delivery challan with the main invoice, copy of the invoice, and give separate delivery challans. For each delivery challan, I have to raise separate e-way bills. Second situation is where the vehicle is broke down, or it involves a case of transshipment, and supplier uses his own vehicles. So if I use my own vehicle, then I can update the vehicle number as and when there is a breakdown or there is a change in vehicle. But if I have handed over the goods to a GTA and the transporter updates the vehicle details in part B, and the transporter may reassign it to either he could reassign or he could change it. Now, assigned transporter has to update the part B. So this can happen multiple times, but the new transporter will have to update it in case of any kind of discrepancies there. It can't be a normal practice, only in exceptional cases when the transporter's hands are getting changed. Okay. Harendra, your question is answered. Part B, in the view of supplier to transport up to 50 kilometers, no part B. In the view of recipient to transport up to 50 kilometers, no part B. Sampurna, I didn't understand your part. Can you please explain that again? Fomia, wherever I'm speaking in Hindi, I've already explained in English, so you don't have to worry that you're losing on anything. I'm trying to convey in both the languages. Jog worker is moving goods within the city. Is e-way bill is necessary? Yes, it is necessary. Sir, if in transport GTA many receipt invoice, but less than 50,000 of all each, but total amount increase 50,000, is GTA responsible for generating e-way bill? So each value he will have to see. If each value is less than 50,000 rupees, then he will not generate. For him, each thing is required, each transportation goods, not the value of the whole truck. Yes, there is a possibility of changing the vehicle number of the goods getting started transported also. That's possible. Part B can be changed, but part A cannot be changed. Who verifies the amount and vehicle details? There's probability of getting fault details. That's where you will have many GST officers who will be at various places. Okay, they can check it, and if there's any faults, they will confiscate it. If supply is interested and less than 50 kilometers, then part B filling is required or not? It is required, Bhavika. Even if it is less than 50 kilometers, and if it is an interstate transportation, still e-way bill is required. Due to breakage of vehicle, if the distance crosses 50 kilometers, then Part B requirement of e-bill is mandatory. Yes, still it is mandatory. हाँ Ninchi, if voice is not clear, please tell me. I think ज़्यादा disturbance नहीं होगा. Can there be difference in e-way bill extend and updated? So e-way bill cannot be extended. We'll come to that. So there is a time limit for the e-way bill. Explain situation 2 again. Yeah. So your vehicle is broken down. Then what do? If it is your own vehicle, because it's not necessary that always you use the vehicle of the transporter, you can have your own vehicle. Then you will update the details in Part B, right? Now, if you have given to a transporter and you have given the transporter's name and his details in Part B, now the responsibilities of the transporter. Now, in the case of a transporter, when there is a breakdown, the transporter will have to update details in Part B. Okay, and the transporter can reassign another transporter also. He can reassign another transport also, and further any updation has to happen in Part B. The assigned transporter will have to update the Part B. The first transporter will not have any authorization. Clear? If the vehicle is broken down within 50 kilometers from the place of delivery, then need to update it? Yes, still. If goods transported from Jaipur to Shimla, but route from Jaipur to Delhi in different GTA and from Delhi to Shimla, then both GTA will fill Part B. So you can fill in only one transporter's details, Vaishali. So you will fill from Jaipur to Shimla, Delhi. From Delhi to Shimla, when it's changed, the Part B will have to get updated. Good. Natural calamities, if transporter go for long distance that is more than 50 kilometers, then Part B required. Yeah, still it is required. But there are exceptions. We will come to that. Now, Part A is furnished, say, for case of this, the instance where assigning e-way bill number to another transporter is required. When Part A is furnished by the consignor, and now you want to assign it to the another transporter, the khidki, the window of Part B is open to the transporter or consignor. If the transporter calls you, immediately says that update the Part B, so you can update it. The transporter says, I don't have access now. Please update it. You can update it. Okay. So where you have entered the Part A details, you can update both. Either you can update or the transporter can update. In another instance where the details of conveyance are updated by the transporter, then you cannot update the details in Part B. If you have mentioned only Part A and Part B, you have not filled in. Part B, as I said, you can do it or the transporter. In the second example, the transporter has updated the detail of the conveyance in Part B. Then you cannot update the details in Part B. The consignor or the recipient shall not be allowed to reassign. Got the difference here? Part A and Part B, if I fill, basically, then I can update it or the transporter can update it. If Part B is updated by the transporter, then only he can change the details in Part B. Yes, Santosh Dash. If the contract is cancelled in middle, then you have made a wrong mistake, CT. When you have moved your goods from one place to another place, unless the goods deliver, if you have cancelled it, then what, your goods itself will not be secured then. So be careful. So you'll have to see, practically it will not happen. You'll get the goods delivered and then you will dispute the any other things. If the total amount exceeding 50,000 is going in two vehicles, okay, but individually less than 50,000, then we need to take e-way bills. Yeah. So here the invoice value is crossing 50, right? Since the invoice value is crossing 50, you will still have to take a e-way bill. Two separate e-way bills in that case. If supplier send goods by own vehicles to recipient, then within 50 kilometers, then both A and B is required. So that exception to 50 kilometers is not generally applicable. So most of you are getting confused with that 50 kilometers limit. That 50 kilometers limit is applicable in very limited situation, not in all situations. I will go through that slide again. Part B of the e-way bill may not be required where the goods are transported for a distance up to 50 kilometers. From where? From the place of supply of the consignor to the place of business of the transporter. Only in such situation there is an exception, not in all situations. So even if you use your own goods vehicle and you're transporting for a kilometer less than 50 kilometers conveyance, you still have to raise a e-way bill, both part A and part B. No exception there. Okay. So if recipient uses own vehicle to transfer the goods, okay, fine. The recipient is sending his vehicle and he is transporting the goods. E-way bill issued by the supplier, but for some condition, receipt not reach to place of supply for specific time, but drop the goods between another state go down. Then is e-way bill valid from go down to POS? So it becomes a case of bill to ship to. So in that case, you cannot update this e-way bill. You will have to raise another e-way bill. Okay. So e-way bill has to move from one point to another point actually. But in between, if there is something, this e-way bill will be running and you have to raise another e-way bill from that state to the ultimate state where you're delivering it to. So any changes in between, then you'll have to raise another e-way bill because this first e-way bill will not be valid because you have moved from state A to state B, but you're diverting your goods to state C. They don't want this to happen. That's the reason they're saying that you will have to raise one e-way bill properly, otherwise raise two e-way bills. Okay. Now, e-way bills, we will enter all these details, basically whether it's exempted, movement, so various questions are there. Basically, all the details will be mentioned from the sub-seller's perspective, where the goods are handed over to the transporter with part A of the e-way bill, right? Then the transporter will fill the balance details in part B, that is option 1, wherein part A, I am filling it, part B details and generation of e-way bill is by the transporter. Or second instances with all the details I am filling, then the transporter can update the vehicle number. If case I've mentioned the wrong number, or if these moving the goods from one vehicle to another, all of this or assigning the transporter can assign transport. The transporter with whom I've assigned, he can reassign to another transport who in turn can update the vehicle number. Clear now? You're right, Manish. That's the nutshell. What we are saying is, if part B is furnished by the consignor or recipient, then he can update part B in case of assigning to another transporter. And in case part B is furnished by the transporter, then only transporter can update the part B. You're right. In case of railway goods, delivery time have any limit or when supplier issue a e-way bill, when delivery to railway or when railway transport to receipt. So when I give it to the railway, I will get the lorry receipt number and I will raise a e-way bill. Now there is a concept of consolidated e-way bill saying that I have raised one e-way bill. Now the transporter has an option. So e-way bill EWB1, which is the e-way bill is mandatory. EWB2, consolidated e-way bill is optional. So consolidated e-way bill says a consolidated e-way bill in form GST EWB2 where multiple consignments are intended to be transported in one conveyance, right? Multiple consignments in one conveyance, then a consolidated e-way bill can be generated. Thus, consolidated e-way bill allows the transporter to carry a single document. So, the 50 items have been given to a transporter. For each thing, he will have to carry an invoice and e-way bill. So he can carry a single document, which is called this consolidated e-way bill, instead of separate documents. And the user should have all the e-way bill numbers of the consignment with which the transporter shall transport in one conveyance. So basically the transporter can do this. If any consignment does not have e-way bill and the value is 50,000, then the transporter has to generate it, which anyways he will generate it, because to have a consolidated e-way bill, and if the value is more than 50,000 rupees, he will have to have all this e-way bills. Consolidated e-way bill does not have an independent validity period. We'll come to the validity period in just 2 minutes, but understand that each e-way bill has a validity period. Okay, if my transportation kilometer is 30 kilometers, my validity of e-way bill is less, and a person who has to transfer up to 200 kilometers or 250 kilometers, his validity is different, right? So it depends on the distance. Now, consolidated e-way bill does not anyways extend the validity period. It is still the same, but instead of carrying multiple e-way bills, he's carrying one e-way bill. And e-way bill 2, which is the consolidated e-way bill, is optional and not mandatory. Okay, what are the other attributes? The data submitted on e-way bill, whatever I submit, can be auto-populated for GST returns, because I'm doing this sale, so this will get auto-populated in my GST returns, GSTR1. Okay, then can I cancel this e-way bill? Yes, within 24 hours of generation. This is the frequent question which I will see coming up. So can the e-way bill be cancelled? Yes, you can cancel it only within 24 hours from the date of generation. After that, you can't cancel it. That too when the goods are not transported or goods are not verified in transit. Now, you have raised a e-way bill within 2 hours, a check post officer has come and he's verified it. Now you cannot cancel it. Okay, so you can cancel within 24 hours only if you're not transported or your e-way bill has not been verified in transit. If it is verified, then you can't cancel. You have identified some mistake in the e-way bill. The goods have moved, vehicle has gone, e-way bill number you mentioned in the invoice. What do? You will have to cancel this e-way bill, tell your transporter saying that on that invoice, the e-way bill number is wrong. I'll give you a new e-way bill, mention it. You cannot edit the details in the e-way bill. Editing option is not available. Okay, acceptance of e-way bill. Once I raise a e-way bill with your number, you're a registered recipient. You can see on your portal that I've raised a e-way bill. Okay, it shall be deemed to be accepted. You have not taken any action. It will be deemed to be accepted when? Within 72 hours of details being made available to him. Okay, even the validity period is 24 hours, but he can cancel it within 72 hours. Or the time of delivery of the goods, whichever is earlier. Before the goods getting delivered, you can cancel it. Okay, our maximum period of 72 hours. So based on the validity of e-way bill. 72 hours are the time of delivery of the goods, whichever is earlier, you can cancel the e-way bill. Why I will cancel it? Because I have not received the goods only. Wrongly, he has mentioned my e-way bill number. You can cancel it. No, you can reject it. So basically, we're talking of the acceptance. If you don't do anything, then it is deemed acceptance. Okay. What is the validity of e-way bill? E-way bill, when I generate, how long is it valid? For over-dimensional cargo and multimodal shipment cargo, where it is big trucks. Okay. What is the meaning of multi-dimensional cargo? One. What is the over-dimensional cargo? A cargo which is having more capacity, more things to be carried than a single thing. That is called as a over-dimensional cargo. It refers to goods or cargo that exceed the standard size and weight. So there is a standard size. Now you're carrying goods more than the standard size. Then you'll have to have a multi-dimension, over-dimensional cargo, like big trucks, which we have seen, big tankers they carry, big kind of windmills for which they use over-dimensional cargo ships, cargo trucks. They are over-dimensional cargo. For them, or any multimodal shipment, saying that you will have to transport through first truck, then ship, and then truck. So if one of the leg involves a ship, then also it's called a multimodal shipment, wherein there the validity of e-way bill is just 20 kilometers per day, because it can travel very slowly and you'll have to have a lot of wait time. You cannot carry these trucks during the day. You have limited time to carry these trucks in the night. And in case of multimodal shipments, you'll have a lot of logistic matters that from one place to another place you'll have to transport. That's where the validity period is. The validity of the e-way bill is up to 20 kilometers one day, which means if I am transporting from Bangalore through all the states to say northeast, and the kilometer is 200 kilometers. And if it's a huge, and I'm using over-dimensional cargo, okay, then 200 divided by 20, the validity of the e-way bill will be 10 days. Because I will mention from and to, based on that distance, the validity of e-way bill is calculated. So up to 20 kilometers one day, and for every 20 kilometers, one additional day. Okay. Now, for other than over-dimensional cargo and multimodal transport, then the distance is 200 kilometers one day. A normal truck you're transporting from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu, 350 kilometers. So the validity is 200 kilometers. So within 2 days, it has to reach. So it is more than sufficient. It can actually reach in 7 to 8 hours. So they're saying that if it is 350 kilometers, you can still use 2 days, because the validity is up to 200 kilometers one day, and every 200 kilometers add it up by one more day. So 2 days. Now, how do I calculate this validity period? The validity period means the date, relevant date. Why is the relevant date relevant? Because validity period is from the relevant date. Now, when does this date start? Relevant date means the date on which the e-way bill has been generated, and the period of validity shall be counted from the time at which the e-way bill has been generated. Okay. Validity shall be counted from the time at which the e-way bill has been generated, and each day shall be counted as the period expiring. Okay. Period expiring at the midnight of the day immediately following the date of generation of e-way bill. So it's not the date of e-way bill. Immediately following the date of generation of e-way bill, the validity of the e-way bill starts when the first entry is made in part B. Okay. So the validity period starts from the end of the day, not today. So if I am transporting to a kilometer of 150 kilometers, the validity is 1 day. So it will, if I've generated today, so it will not end today itself. It will run for 1 day, which means from today midnight till tomorrow midnight. So effectively, I have 2 days. That's how the calculation says that it will be for 1 day. So up to 200 kilometers 1 day, but it starts from the midnight of the day it is generated, right? I've generated and given to the transporter. Transporter, if he's entered today, the validity is still tomorrow. If the transporter is entered part B tomorrow, and then he started the conveyance, it is there in his godown, and he started the conveyance tomorrow. So from the day he enters the details in part B, that is when the validity will start. So if he enters tomorrow, then that validity is there till day after tomorrow, right? Now let's take this example. Time of generation. E-way bill is generated on 1st of April 2018 at 5 p.m. for transport of cargo, which will cover a distance of 90 kilometers. Then what is the validity period from the relevant date? Tell me. Is there any amount limit in the 50 kilometers part? No, Vanessa, there's no limit. So if part B is furnished by consignor or recipient, then he update part B in case of assigning another transporter. And in case part B is furnished by the transporter, then only transporter and update part B. You're right. So in case of railway good delivery time, have any limit or when supplier issues e-way bill, when delivered to railway or when railway transport to recipient? No. As such, once the railway receipt is received, that is when the time will start, because the transportation is already started. From the date you get your railway receipt, from that time itself, we have to raise the e-way bill. For non-taxable supply and exempt supply, e-way bill not required, Kiran. Sir, is kilometer matters or no? It does matter. With some invoice, we cannot raise two e-way bill in bill to ship to or to. How is it possible? In same invoice, we cannot raise two e-way bill. Yes, we cannot raise. So only one e-way bill you raise from bill to and ship to, and the recipient's actual person's details will not come. If the goods in vehicle more than 50,000, but against the difference invoice of the different receivers, is there any requirement of e-way bill? So if you're raising different invoice to different persons, then separate e-way bills will be required. Okay. Explain multimodal shipment having one leg. Okay. So multimodal shipment having one leg in ship means it's not like physically one leg. Your leg is not involved, right? So it is the leg, which means the one of the limb, one of the transportation touches the ship. जैसे I am transporting in a coastal location. I am transporting from here to Mumbai. रोड से जाएगा तो लंबा रहेगा, और माई गुड्स सच दैट उसको शिप में ही जाना है. तो मैं यहाँ से बैंगलोर से, आई डोंट हैव अ पोर्ट, आई विल सेंड इट टू मैंगलोर, और मैंगलोर से पोर्ट में भेजूंगा, राइट? सो इट इन्वॉल्व्स मूवमेंट थ्रू अ ट्रक एंड देन अ शिप, और फिर शिप से अगेन टू माई कस्टमर्स लोकेशन इन अ ट्रक. So it is a multimodal shipment, right? क्योंकि multiple modes है, multiple modes of shipment है. One is truck, then the ship, then again the truck, right? और क्या हो रहा है इसमें, एक one side of the shipment, one leg of the shipment, one part of the shipment. Leg can be one part of the shipment. One part of the shipment is through ship. So then it will be called as a multimodal shipment. It is not that if I transport, okay, first let's understand this, then I'll tell what is not. So when multiple modes of shipment are there and one path of it is through a ship, then it is a multimodal shipment. Then the distance will be up to 20 kilometers one day. If it is normal shipment, then 200 kilometers. Clear? And in this example, my example, I'm not talking about multimodal shipment or a case of a bigger shipment. That is, it is neither an over-dimensional cargo or a monthly modal shipment. Or in my case, it's a normal case of other than multi-dimensional cargo, over-dimensional cargo, or a MMT. So if in between the C there is a change in vehicle, then how we will update part B, as there is no facility to update details? You can update it, Nitish, because there is an option to update the details in part B. Because in such case, the transporter will not mention the details. You will mention the details in such case where then you are having multimodal transportation. Then if you are entering, you can update it. You will have to keep the control there. Transportation of windmill blades takes more days. Does it take more than 20 kilometers per day? I don't think so. So they have looked at the practicality, and definitely it travels around more than 100 kilometers a day, but still they have called it as 20 kilometers. That's a valid. If multimodal may transport through truck, if multimodal you transport through truck, then it is 200 kilometers, not 20 kilometers. Multimodal transport with one leg in a ship, then it is 20 kilometers. Okay. So answer to the first part, E-way bill generated on 1st April. Validity is 90 kilometers. So how many days? 1 day, right? So if it is 1 day, will it end on 1st April itself? No. Everybody is given a right answer that it is on the 2nd April. Okay. In second case, if it is for a distance of 190 kilometers, then नेंची शिप तो बोट्स धीरे चलते हैं इसीलिए एक दिन का 20 किलोमीटर जहां कहाँ 200 किलोमीटर और कहाँ 20 किलोमीटर है तो आराम से कवर हो जाएगा. Okay. In second case, it is same as first answer. Somebody has said 3rd April. That is what I'm interested in. And how can it be 3rd April, Astatwa? Second case also, the validity is 1 day itself. Had it been 290 kilometers, then it will be 2 days. Sri Lakshmi, what happens is in case of an over-dimensional cargo, where the cargo size, truck size is very huge, they can travel less kilometers. There, the validity period is 20 kilometers per day. And other than over-dimensional cargo, it is 200 kilometers per day. Over-dimensional cargo and multimodal transport, wherein one of the legs involves through a ship, then it is 20 kilometers. Okay. And in case of third bill generated on 14th March, then what is the validity period? Then you're right. It is up till midnight of 11th April means 11:59 p.m. of April. You're right. You're right, Mal. Third case, it is 15th March. Correctly said. First day will end on 15 March and second day will end on 16th March. Okay, now let's proceed further on other important aspects. Now, can I extend the validity period of e-way bill? If validity expires, can I extend it? No, you cannot extend it because the intention itself that they're given sufficient kilometers to cover it up. If you are not able to transport it, then you have to, if the vehicle is changed or something, then you can do a change of vehicle, but your goods have to reach on time, right? So you practically cannot extend the validity of e-period, e-way bill, but you can make an application to the commissioner saying that I have the goods transport, but for a valid reason, the goods are not getting reached. Then the commissioner itself will see the situation, give a notification generally, or you can make an extension by a transporter can make an extension in exceptional circumstances. That is in terms of any kinds of riots, danga fazad, basically law and order, natural calamity, in case of floods or something, in case of an accident of a conveyance, he can make an extension. So the transporter can, through his login, make an extension. Reason for extension needs to be explained. The validity must be extended within 8 hours from the time of expiry. Expiry ke last moment mein it can't be done. It can't be done like the first instant. It should be extended within 8 hours from the time of expiry. Okay, so extension is possible only in these two cases. The taxpayer, as such, generally cannot extend it. Now, e-way bill, when it is not required for the following type of goods, it's not required. Okay, so a jeweler, LPG, kerosene, postage baggage, natural or cultured pearls, okay, currencies, used personal and household effects, coral, unworked and worked corals. For this, e-way bills are not required. You have to remember all of these. Then, when e-way bill is not required, list specified in this annexure what we have mentioned, goods transported by non-motorized vehicles. Okay, साइकिल रिक्शा से चला गया, हाथ वाले से ले, जो आदमी वो जो हाथ का गाड़ी है उससे चलाते हैं. So all of this, all non-motorized conveyance, you don't need a e-way bill. Goods transported from the port, airport to ICD. Okay, inland cargo, inland container depot is the customs house depot itself. Instead of being at the port, there is a inland ports. Okay, so any transport between this airport or the ports from where you're importing till that ICD, you don't need because those are also equivalent to custom zone itself. So there also you don't need a e-way bill. Then movement of goods within notified areas. So there can come up with some areas. So there is no notification, but the government will come up with some saying that this area is very dangerous, and for movement of goods within notified areas, e-way bill is not required. They have that power. Then goods are being transported or specified in schedule. So certain goods are specified in that schedule. It is not required. Then when goods are being transported, alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So somebody had asked this question. Your answer is here. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption, petrol, high-speed diesel, motor spirit. On that, not required. When the supply of goods is treated as no supply under Schedule 3. Okay. Schedule 3 में exception है. So in that not required. Heavy water, nuclear fuels, transit cargo from or to Nepal and Bhutan, movement of goods by the Ministry of Defense, consignor is central government, state government, or local authority. Empty cargo containers, on that also not required. And when the place of consignor to weighbridge and back up to 20 kilometers, goods must be accompanied with a delivery challan. For weighing bridge, where you take it, not required. Yeah, so this is just a list, nothing much to explain here. Then documents are devices which has to be carried along with conveyances. You have to carry a invoice, bill of supply, or a delivery challan, and then you have to carry a e-way bill either in physical form or a e-way bill number in electronic form. That is also sufficient. Now, if we have seen the requirement of e-invoicing, right? So if e-invoice is applicable to the taxpayer, then the QR code itself is sufficient. Their physical document also is not required because all the documents of invoice is available in the e-invoice. And e-invoice, if you generate the QR code, all the details of the invoice is available, which having a IRN, which is the invoice reference number. It can be produced instead of a physical invoice. Okay. So these are the documents which has to be accompanied. What are the other aspects of e-way bill? Verification of documents and conveyance by the officers to intercept and verify the e-way bill. So e-way bill, when you're moving with the e-way bill, the officer has an authorization that any officers of the GST who is authorized by the commissioner, they can intercept. Intercept matlab rokna. So they can stop your vehicle and verify the e-way bill details. What else they can do? They can inspect and verify the goods. Okay, not that check post हट गया तो आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो. Not so very open because it can't be that it is not controlled. So it is controlled to the extent that the officers can inspect and verify the goods. And what is the procedure? He has to give a summary report. It's not that since we have been bounded by the officer, officers are open, kuch bhi kar sakte hain. Nahi, officers are also bounded. They have to give a summary report when within 24 hours of inspection, and they have to give a final report within 3 days of the inspection, right? 24 hours and 3 hours. 24 hours में तो आपको summary report देना पड़ेगा because they will need some time. So a summary report saying that I have intercepted the goods, I found something mistake, and I've intercepted basic information they will give. But the final report they have to give within 3 days of inspection. Now this 3 days can be further extended to further 3 days. So 3 plus 3, 6 days. So for this extension also, they have to give reason to their high-ups. Otherwise, their time limit is only 3 days. Okay. And so that is the department's perspective objective. Now, physical verification is done at one place in one state, then no further verification can be done in same state. ऐसा नहीं कि your state is so big, I have to reach 2 checkposts, okay, or 2 checkposts comes in between. So every officer will catch me. No, that is not possible. If one officer in one state is caught, then I can go to the other state. Other state, another officer can catch, right? But generally, if one inspection is done, I can say that inspection is done. Everything is clear. But the rule says that one inspection in one state is over, another inspection should not catch it. Then, but if specific information is received, this guy has done something, they receive specific information, then they can again do this inspection. Okay. Then restriction on furnishing of information in Part A. Okay. A person who's paying composition tax, which means that your e-way bill will be blocked. Blocked means you cannot mention the details of the e-way bill. You cannot generate the e-way bill. When a person who's paying tax under composition scheme has not furnished the statement for payment of self-assessment for 2 consecutive quarters. For 2 quarters, you have not made the payment. So the things what we had mentioned in registration cancellation, that is different. Here it is different. So you have to be careful here that a person who's paying tax under composition has not furnished statement of payment for 2 consecutive quarters, or a person who's paying tax under regular scheme has not furnished the returns for 2 consecutive periods. First it was months, but now it is consecutive periods because you have quarterly scheme also. So for 2 periods, if you have not furnished your monthly returns, then also you cannot. Or a person who's paying under regular scheme has not furnished GSTR1 for 2 months or 2 quarters, then also you cannot. Then a person whose registration is suspended. So these 4 people, be careful. If you are delaying, don't delay beyond 2 months, otherwise your e-way bill will be blocked. However, on request to commissioner, you can make a request, and if the commissioner allows, he can still allow you to generate the e-way bill, saying that I will, due to financial reasons, I'm not able to pay my GST returns. If there's a genuine reason given, then he can allow you to furnish the information in e-way bill. E-way bill blocked for raising, but not for being entered as a recipient. So if you want to receive goods, e-way bill is raised by the supplier. There he can mention your details because you can receive it. Your access to e-way bill is blocked. You being part of the e-way bill is no problem. Okay. So e-way bill blockage for these four category of people is blocked for them to generate a e-way bill. Now, if I have to receive some goods from somebody, I will tell, please mention my GST number and you send the goods. And if some customer wants goods from me, I will tell my e-way bill is blocked. So you do one thing from your e-way bill, mention my GST number and please go ahead. It will still allow him. Okay, so e-way bill is blocked from my end to generate a e-way bill, but not blocked from my supplier or receiver's end. What are the other aspects where a vehicle has been intercepted? Okay, interception means roka gaya hai. It has been stopped and it is detained for more than 30 minutes. Within, it shouldn't take so much time for them to decide, right? You have to intercept and confiscate. If you're confiscating, fine, you will follow the order of 24 hours and 3 days. But you're just holding me and keeping me that I should not move. I'm still checking your vehicle. If more than 30 minutes they are detaining me, then the transporter can upload the said information regarding detention on the common portal, saying that I have been held more than 30 minutes. That power is there. So GST gives equal power to the taxpayer and the tax officer. How much power tax officer has, similar power is there with the taxpayer also. Okay, so if you're intercepted and detained more than 30 minutes, then you can upload the information that you have been detained. So that his higher ups will get to know and they will take some action. You can't hold the goods more than 30 minutes. What's the matter? Next, permission for allowing to use e-way bill can be given on request by the commissioner. Wherein, if it has been blocked, that's the case where I said that where it has been blocked, you can make application and the commissioner can give you a permission to still enter the details. Sorry, I didn't take your questions here. By 16 March in Thursday, they've said 2 days. So just to explain, one day is next day, third day is the other case. So in the third case, I will bring you that. So don't get confused. Yeah, in this case, the number of kilometers have been mentioned, right? In this case, number of kilometers is not mentioned. So to explain that, I mentioned that the first day ends on 15th March, second day ends on 16th March, third day ends on 17th March. So to give that clarity. The last option, based on the kilometers, you will decide, Srinivasan, whether it's 1 day or 2 days. Since the kilometers have not been mentioned, I mentioned 1 day and 2 day both. Yes, these are decided on the kilometers and shortest route possible. Yes. Okay. Can we have some MCQs now? Please explain cancellation of e-way bill. So cancellation of e-way bill says that if you want to cancel it within 24 hours, you have a time limit to cancel it, or if the goods are not verified. So within 24 hours, if the goods are verified by any of the officer, then you're done. You cannot cancel. Simple. Midnight means 12 o'clock. Yes, you're right. Extension of validity period. When extension by transporter, in which case? Extension of validity period in limited cases. Okay. When there is a natural reason, natural calamity, law and order, there is some strike, okay, and then there is a rasta roko, there is a blockage of the road, you cannot, there is an accident of the conveyance. In that same genuine cases, you can ask for extension. That extension should be within 8 years from the time of expiry. Once the thing is expired, within 8 years, you have to apply. Within 8 hours, you have to apply for extension. If e-way bill is issued at 1 a.m. on 12th April, then up to 13th April midnight or 14th April. So it is 200 kilometers, 1 day. 12th April means midnight from 12th April, 1 a.m., which is early morning you have raised, right? So 12th, from 12th till 13th. So till 13th midnight, you can claim it. So e-way bill also you can strategically take 1 day extra time. If you raise a e-way bill in the morning, then you'll have time limit up till next day. Clear, Vaishali? Okay. We'll take up the MCQs. If there's a mistake or wrong entry in the e-way bill, what has to be done? I was saying you can edit the e-way bill, but edit का option तो है ही नहीं. Sangeevani, Sangeetvani, you don't have an option to edit e-way bill. Edit option is not there in the e-way bill portal. Seventy-two hours wala concept. I'll tell you that 72 hours wala concept again. That is the acceptance of e-way bill. If you raise a e-way bill and it is deemed that supplier is accepted because he's not taken any action, he has a time limit of 72 hours. Matlab, if I've raised a wrong e-way bill on you, you can't do anything if you don't do anything, if you're just silent about it. But if you react something within 72 hours, go to your e-way bill portal and say reject it, then it will not come on your portal that you are the receiver. Okay, so it's only for the receiver who can do some action, not for the supplier. That is the concept of that 72 hours. The receiver can reject it within 72 hours or before the goods gets delivered. Okay, so everybody is giving a correct answer that yes, you have to cancel the e-way bill and generate a new one. What has to be done if the validity of e-way bill expires? Can you explain exception to 50,000 limit? Sure. When e-way bill is not required when value is below 50,000 is three cases. When your principal is transferring interstate transfer to the job worker, or when there is a interstate transfer of handicraft goods. Basically these two things, because third is a voluntary thing, saying that below 50,000 also, if you want to do voluntary, you can generate it. So that's an exception. But the two important points is when there is a interstate transfer of goods by the principal to job worker. So it applies that when the job worker also returns goods, he will also have to any kind of movement between job worker and principal for any value, and 50,000 will not be applicable. Any value between job worker to principal, there's first exception. Second is interstate movement of handicraft goods. There also without any value, you have to raise a e-way bill. Clear, Mayur? How receiver knows that e-way bill is issued in his name? Once I mention GST number of the receiver, then the receiver can go to the e-way bill portal and see who all have raised in e-way portal in his name. Right? Like how in income tax you have a concept of TDS credit. So if I give TDS credit to you, you can see it in your portal, right? Similar to that way, in your e-way bill, if I raise a e-way bill in your name, you can go to your e-way bill portal and check it. Ms. T, what is your question? The goods are not supposed to be moved. We're giving the answer. No, the validity of e-way bill is expired. Then what do we do? The correct answer is D. Yes. The goods are not supposed to be moved. You have to stay it there. And the transporter will have to extend the validity period after updating the reasons for extension. Yeah, question number 3. Is it required by transporter to furnish the information in Part A, that is all the details of form e-way bill? Mayur, correct answer, first answer. Right. Answer is correct. The option is A. Only on authorization from a registered person you can fill it up, not otherwise. What is the form to be filled on the common portal for consolidated e-way bill? E-way bill 2. Correct answer is 4B. 4C. Yeah, right. Nobody's given a wrong answer. Everybody's given a correct answer. And the last question for the day. Now, only one e-way bill can be generated on one invoice or document. Only one e-way bill can be generated on one invoice or document. Right. So there's a confused thing, right? Because people are saying that well, there are two trucks involved. Okay. So you can involve two things. So the question itself is framed in such a way to confuse you that one invoice you can generate one bill, that's right. But if one invoice has multiple transportation, like the example of delivery channel, one invoice with multiple channel challans, multiple delivery challans, there you can generate multiple e-bills. So for one invoice, possible that you raise multiple e-bills. So only one invoice can be generated for invoice? No, the answer is no. Okay. Is there any maximum limit? Maximum limit for what? For one invoice, you can generate only one. But if you have delivery challan numbers, so based on the delivery challans, you can generate it. But if you say that there are no delivery challans, just invoice and one movement, then the answer becomes yes. People have given yes is also correct. B, that is also correct because 5A, you have said that one invoice, there's only one movement, so one e-way bill. But I'm saying a case where there are multiple delivery challans against one invoice, there the answer becomes 5B. Okay. So hope you enjoyed the session on e-way bill. It was otherwise a boring topic. Hope we have made it understood. We made it interesting and we have understood it clearly. Yeah, in exam, you'll not get such half incomplete questions. You'll get a proper one. So this question itself is half, not a complete question. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.